You know, in the film, we show how the UK went from 6 million to almost 70 million people. That is totally abnormal for human history, for a country like England, like any other, to increase by thousands of percentages.
I mean, it's hard, isn't it? Because I don't think human beings like to be told, hey, stop having kids. If you want to reduce population, it has to happen slow enough so that the economy doesn't crash.
You know, you're so worried about like the economy without realizing, okay, your supermarket in Tesco, Andrew, is being supplied in a way that's not sustainable. And if you're worried about the economy, then again, the economy needs stability. Whatever product you are selling, whatever way you are building, it all comes down to natural resources. And if you don't have that, then it's gonna collapse.
The thing is, I think this is when the public often has issues with some of the environmentalism and things like that, because they're often being asked to do things fully aware that the people who are causing a lot of damage are not going to do it. So if you say to the English people who are already concerned about the fact that they're becoming a minority in their own country, let alone in the world, you say to them, you need to have even fewer children, fewer children, they know that they're just going to be completely wiped out and they're going to be living under Sharia law within about 30 years, and so will you. And then we'll be going, okay, Greenpeace and so on. Well, what good is Greenpeace?
No, but Andrew, but like, again, I completely disagree with that. Everybody cares about having a livable planet. I don't think that only the West, you know, is interested in that.
I think like the thing, what I meant by that was just when people are told that they should do things to help the environment. So let's say net zero, which is a totally different topic, okay? That's not what we're talking about. But they're told, hey, you need to recycle more because blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, look, if China's not going to do it, then there is no point in anyone else doing it because they're doing 99% of the problems.
Okay.
So that's what, if people are being told in England, you've got to get your birth rate below 1. Meanwhile, all of these people in the Middle East and Africa are having 5 or 6 kids. What is the world demographics going to look like in 20, 30 years?
Okay.
They don't want to live under Sharia law.
Okay, Andrew. Okay, Andrew, got it. But listen, first of all, this film that I made is not geared towards one group of people, towards the United Kingdom, okay? I made it and it's actually on YouTube live for anyone in the world to see it, from Africa to Pakistan to anywhere, okay? And so no, I do reject that thing about you're telling these people to do this. Like, I'm not telling any group of people, I'm telling the world. Like, I'm telling the world that it's just not gonna be sustainable.
If there are some countries with already a far below replacement level birth rate, then I don't know, other countries with 3 times or 4 times that birth rate.
Just as big as a problem. Just as big. Japan is shrinking, and they're just as big as a problem, Andrew, because their population of 120 million or whatever is completely unsustainable. They're relying on resources from Latin America, from South Asia, from Africa, depleting the forest in all these people to support their 120 million people in Japan. So even though they are shrinking, they are every bit as much of a problem. You know what I mean? So it really is a global problem.
I know. But I think this whole time, we're talking past each other a bit, because I'm agreeing with you that it is a problem, right? I'm like, I get it. Like, I'm saying that is a problem. However, we have this other problem, and I don't think you're willing to engage with that problem as well. Right, I'm here with Sofia Pineda Ochoa. Is that how I say your name?
Perfect. I respond to everything, but you got the pronunciation perfect.
That's how it should be. Okay, and anyway, you've got this wonderful film that argues, among many things, it's really interesting actually, because I think initially I looked and thought, okay, this is going to be kind of woke or whatever, and then you realize, oh, hang on, these are some really interesting talking points that I think, you and I are both equally interested in, I suppose, because I'm a vegan, but your film actually argues, I think, that veganism, global animal consumption, it keeps increasing despite that. So what's actually going on?
Yeah, I'm a vegan like you, and first of all, like, it is very important to be vegan. It's very important, Andrew. I know you care about your health. You take care of your health. It's important for, for your personal benefit. and so that you personally are not contributing to the damage, to the harm in, that animals necessarily suffer with the consumption of animal foods. So it is very important on a personal level to go vegan. It absolutely is, But having said that, unfortunately, what we're seeing is that although there has been an explosion in the popularity of veganism, and there has been, and in your country especially, like I love going to your country because it's just so easy. It's just so nice food everywhere. Like everywhere there's vegan options. You go to any pub, there's vegan stuff, It has exploded. Veganism has exploded. Yet, unfortunately, the amount of animals that are used for food production every year keeps increasing. Because on one hand, people are moving from poverty to middle class, and as they do that, they tend to eat more animal foods. But in my view, another very, very important issue, which is what the film focuses on, is the fact that our population is increasing very rapidly, is increasing a lot. Even though, when you look at the news, everybody seems to think like it's declining and, there's like a population collapse. But actually, our population is increasing by more than 1 million people every week. And that, over like a year, it's close to 70 million people per year, which is kind of like the size of the UK. So if you think about it, we're adding a new UK worth of people to the planet every single year. And so sadly, as important as it is for us to transition collectively towards veganism, right now it's not making a dent collectively, because just any kind of gains that the vegan movement is having are being completely overshadowed, overpowered, and erased, I would say erased, by our ever-increasing population.
So as the population, the percentage of vegans maybe rises, but the overall number of people rises even faster.
It is, but if you think about it, like it's pretty hard to compete with that growth like the one that we're having. Like in the film, we mentioned the example of Veganuary, which I'm sure you're familiar with that organization. Again, UK organization, a wonderful organization, amazing, like so good. It puts out all these nice recipes. It's a very, very good organization. It looks like it's very organized. It has a lot of celebrities attached to it. And they put out these campaigns to encourage people to go vegan. But like the film shows, like in a recent year, they said that they had 600,000 people commit to going vegan for the month of January. And the thing is that even if they do, and even if they stay vegan for the rest of their lives, at like 1 week later, we already have 1 million more people, and then 1 million more, and then 1 million more. So it's really hard to make a dent in anything with this kind of growth we are having, but people are just not talking about it, and it's a problem.
Where do you stand on people who, a lot of people say that they don't think we should be vegans, or that the problem really is the way that animals are kept and tortured, and it's such a horrible existence for them. But what about Joe Rogan? He goes out and hunts an elk or something and eats it himself. Is that a where do you stand on that?
Oh, I think like I very much stand on the fact that like whatever, like there's no nice way to kill an animal. Like I'm sure the elk that Joe Rogan hunts with his bare hands or whatever, like the thing is that like there's no ethical way of consuming an animal who you don't have to consume, of taking their one and only sentient precious life for something that you don't eat. And the fact of the matter is that nobody has to eat any animal foods. Not you, not me, not Joe Rogan, nobody, The American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has their position statement. It's super clear. It says that like a well-planned vegan diet is appropriate for individuals in all stages of life, including athletes, including pregnancy, including infants. So the thing is, and if we don't have to, then why do it? So there's really no ethical way of doing it. And also, when you have 8 billion people, there's no ethical way of doing it, because it's so many people, you know, like it's a disaster for the environment. So, but even if there was 10 people or 2 people instead of 8 billion, it would be just as unethical to take an animal's sentient, precious, one and only life when we don't have to, when there's no need for that.
What makes me sad sometimes is nature itself, and it really does. Like sometimes I'm awake at night thinking about this, what animals do to each other, and the horrible way they live their lives when they get to old age, and you know, inevitably another animal eats them. It's not nice, is it? And it's sort of, I don't know, it hasn't stopped me wanting to be a vegan. I don't want to partake in any of it. I'm not interested in putting a dead thing in my mouth. I don't want to do that. But I do sometimes think, man, I sort of understand the Joe Rogan side a bit. Like, it's like, look, that elk is going to have a horrible end anyway from another animal.
Not necessarily. Well, how does he know? Well, you know, elk, but they have how does he know what like lifespan they have, and also, yeah, I don't know. Then, you know, how did he get one that was about to die like that? There's no way of, like, I think he's just making excuses. And I understand what you're saying. Animals kill each other. It's a cruel world. Animals kill each other, right? Like this. But the thing is that, like, you know, in some ways, like, people try to emulate animals and say, okay, yeah, they kill each other, so let's go ahead and kill them. But, like, you know, like, yeah, they kill their kids too. And they mate, and then they kill the mate, like some species, after mating. Or they greet each other and they smell their asshole or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's like, we don't do that. So if we are pretending, if we're telling ourselves that we are like a little bit more sophisticated, that we have technology, that we are now able to do art and culture and technology and YouTube videos, and we have all this stuff, well, then how come you don't have the sophistication to not want to unnecessarily harm animals? So to me, what Joe Rogan is doing and all of them, they are unnecessary harming animals. You know what I mean?
You suggest that some vegan groups avoid discussing this gap between the perception and the reality. Why do you think that is?
I think a lot of environmental groups, whether it's with regards to plastic pollution or climate change or biodiversity loss or vegan, you know, like wanting to reduce the impact of animal agriculture, most groups rarely discuss the issue of population growth. It's just considered kind of a taboo issue. It's considered a taboo issue. I guess they feel like that is... in my view, it's just like they don't want to have any kind of realism in the conversation, and they confuse realism with negativity. Or they confuse it because there have been some like coercive issues in the past where people were in some countries, you know, forced to have forced sterilizations and horrible things like that. So then they think, oh, if I say that population is a problem, they're going to say that I'm racist, that I want, you know, coercive issues, you know, imposing, you know, issues on human rights. But that's not the case. You know, you can speak clearly and logically about the issue about how our population is growing, how it's affecting so many issues, the environment being, you know, a major one of that and a very important one of that. And, you know, you can talk about that and promote things that, you know, that favor human rights. And in my view, Andrew, the way to solve this is not through issues about that impose on human rights, but is simply just raising awareness of it. Because if people like knew, then they would make different choices when planning their families. But if the organizations from Greenpeace to Oxfam to all of these organizations are not talking about it, then people just don't think about it. And they have their families because they really think that there's no problem with our population because they are not talking about it. So I really kind of put a lot of blame on this situation on the environmental organizations. Because, you know, sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but, you know, like I showed the film to, you watch the Tinder Swindler, that movie on Netflix?
Yeah.
We got feedback from the editor for that film, from the Tinder Swindler. What's his name? I don't remember, but he's a very, very good editor. And he watched the film and he was like, oh, Sofia, but you're attacking soft targets. Like, why don't you go after, like, you know, other companies, like big companies? And the film does, you know, do that too, but it's more focused on that, on the environmental organizations. He was like, why are you going after them? They're just soft targets. And I told him, well, no, because they have a higher level of scrutiny, like, because people believe them. Like if Chevron or ExxonMobil like says climate change is this and that, or nobody's gonna believe them because they're just there to make money, you know. But if Greenpeace is saying, okay, there's no problem with our population, then people are gonna believe that. So I think they should be held to a much higher level of scrutiny. And right now, you know, there is this aversion about talking about our population growth, this real aversion. And they even outright deny it and say it's not a problem. And it's really, really harmful. It's harmful for the environment. It's harmful for people. It's harmful for countries that are developing, like, you know, like Mexico, like the damage that, because you know, in England, even like England, like you live in England, your country is overpopulated. All countries are overpopulated. And so what happens is when you, Andrew, go to, what's the name of a grocery store close to you?
Tesco.
So when you go to Tesco, it doesn't look like there's a problem. There's plenty of food. Everything is good. There's abundance, right? But you can't grow that food in England because you guys have such a huge population. You're not able to support it. So you are growing your avocados in Mexico, like depleting water there. The berries are growing in Latin America, in Mexico too. A lot of water is being depleted. So it really has a, like this overpopulation has a problem like everywhere. And they just don't want to admit to it. They're saying, oh, it's an issue of like poor countries, but it's not. It's a global issue. Like all countries are overpopulated. They just are. You know?
Yeah. Well, our governments seem to deliberately become overpopulated because they keep bringing more and more people from other parts of the world to fill up. I suppose my understanding of this is that we have two problems at the same time that seem to be opposites, but actually are not necessarily, which is the population decline as well as overpopulation. So, you know, too many people, but also too large of a section of those people are elderly. So we have a lot of people who are younger who are not going to be able to pay for the older people who are retired. So that's why people talk about population decline being a huge problem, and we need more younger people to come into each country. But then overall, what you're discussing is the bigger picture is a huge number of people that is just too many as well. And governments are sitting there going, gosh, we need to have fewer people, but also we need more young people now to be able to pay for the old people. So we bring in more immigrants, and it's just a cycle that never ends.
That's just a pyramid Ponzi scheme. That's just kind of like, I mean, no, but there's no population decline. Okay, this is like a very thing that people are very, very confused about, the whole population decline. Okay, so they'll say, okay, our growth rate is decreasing every year, right? They'll say our growth rate is going down. Our growth rate is going down. What a problem. Okay, Andrew, if we grow our human population every single year by, tell me a huge number that you think is ridiculous. Like, tell me one huge number that you think is ridiculous.
It's a million people.
Oh, well, we grow that by in a week. In a week, we grow by 1 million people. But no, tell me something bigger. Like, what is the... what is a huge number? What I mean, what's a number? I don't even know what's a number bigger than a billion. But say, okay, say we grow our population, our world population, by a billion people every year. That's 1,000 million people. That's huge, right? That's ridiculous, like totally unsustainable, right?
Yeah, but that's in the certain countries, isn't it? That's like
No.
India.
No, this is just for an example. Just so you can understand this thing about decline. So if every year you grow the population by a billion people, the growth rate will still appear smaller and smaller and smaller every year, because the growth rate is just the percentage of the total cake. So if every year the total cake gets bigger, even if you're growing it by the same number, every year it looks smaller and smaller and smaller. But like, why does it even matter what the growth rate is? Because like we are growing by close to 70 million people every year. So there's really not a problem with population decline. It's just not a problem at all.
The population decline is about replacement levels. It's simple. It's just like, are there more people dying or more people being born in a country? And in many countries now, there are more people dying. So Japan had nearly 1 million more deaths than births last year. So Japanese people are in decline. That's just how it is.
That's exactly. It is in decline, but yet it's also, even if it's declining, it's still overpopulated. So because all of the countries, including Japan, including Sweden, including whatever country may be raising alarms about how they're not having enough young people, they all grew to unsustainable levels when the Industrial Revolution happened. When everybody started using fossil fuels, they grew, and they all grew to unsustainable levels. So even if they're not able to support, even if they're slightly declining or not growing, they're still overpopulated. They're still relying on other countries. They're still using resources and producing waste in a way that is not sustainable. So this decline is just not a problem anywhere. But the other part of it, the using resources unsustainably, that is a problem everywhere. Like there's no country.
This is why I'm saying that two things that seem to be contradictory are both problems. I think population decline is still definitely a problem, but so is overpopulation. So I agree with you that overpopulation since the Industrial Revolution means we have too many people. We're relying on, as you say, the other parts of the world. That's one problem. And then a totally separate problem is the decline in population, because it means that we can't afford to pay for older people. We don't have enough young people in the workforce to pay for older people. So we have to bring in immigrants from other countries at a speed that nobody's ever known before, is completely disrupting the cultures and ecosystems of countries. So they're just two separate. I think I see them as two totally separate problems.
But you know, a lot of economists have different views on that, about how like young people to support older people, like, you know, that, you know, it's kind of like, you know, when people have fewer children, they have more money to spend, and that in itself injects like a boost into an economy that's called the demographic dividend. So, but they're not talking about that. Like they're just, I think that issue about like needing to is kind of like a Ponzi scheme that doesn't really make sense. Like to support what specifically? To support what? Well, you know what I mean?
I guess like you need an active working population to support the non-working population.
And we have that. And we're growing by 1 million people per year. Like in the countries, they all have that. Like which country, apart from Japan, is decreasing?
I'd have to look that up, but I think quite a few of them are now below replacement level birth rates.
And how have they fared in the last 10 years? Like if you look at Japan 10 years ago and today, like what is the total? Like what is the total decline that they did? Like how were they 20 years ago and how are they today?
I wouldn't know actually, but I think people are projecting that this is going to be a problem as this next population gets to working age. It's going to be a problem. That's why China reversed the one-child policy, because they started to realize they're not going to be able to support the non-working population.
Let's see, Japan population today. So right now, today is 122 120.
22 million.
Yes. So Japan population in 2000. 126 million. It hardly seems like, like 122 million. So going from 6 million to 4 million in a country that really can't even support itself with primary products. It seems like people are just focused on that to the detriment and ignoring that actually if you don't have a stable environment, your economy is going to collapse too.
Yeah,
If
of
you don't
course,
have
of course.
because it's gonna collapse.
Well, I can see here the UK is at 1.4 children now.
And so
So
what
it's
was
way
it
below-
like in the year 2000? So let's take a look at that. So the UK, what was the UK in the year 2000?
the population. Yeah, but we're just bringing in immigrants. That's the thing.
I know, but in the end, like they are consuming just like everyone else, right? Like, and if they're saying that we need more people, so why do we need more people? So the UK population in the year 2000 was 59.8 million. Okay, the UK population today, 69.
Yeah.
So as you can see, they really focus on this percentage without looking at the bigger picture.
No, well,
You know
I
what I
think
mean?
that's why there's two problems. We've grown the population hugely by importing people from countries that do have very high birth rates. North Africa, the Middle East, some parts of it, they have very high birth rates, and so we have grown our country significantly by importing people from there, which I think is a huge issue to solve the problem of the declining population. But you're absolutely, I don't disagree with you that the world
But I don't
population
think that
is
like the
going up.
problem, like if it was declining, then they would want to keep it even or whatever. Like you have not kept it even. You know what I mean? The UK has not kept it even. Like it has increased significantly. Like it was under 60 million. It was under 60 million in the year 2000 and unable to support itself.
It's completely
Unable,
crazy.
unable
I agree.
to
I'm agreeing with you. I completely agree. They brought in way too many people. It's unbelievable what they did. They've completely ruined the country. They finished it. That's it. Finished.
But and that is that is an issue that is also it's not just a UK issue. It's like a global issue. Because if these people had stayed wherever they had stayed, is what I'm saying. Like, it's not about like one specific country, one specific continent. Like all of the countries, all of the continents are using resources and producing waste in a way that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So yeah, they focus
agree.
on the rates, but like if you look at it over time, like what rate, what decrease? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying they're both problems. They're both huge problems, and I don't know how you can solve them. It's impossible to solve. I mean, how would you solve it? Overpopulation.
The overpopulation issue, I would solve it because, well, the way that we explain it in the film is like, so I'm a psychiatrist, as you know, and I think that people have a big interest in surviving. It's just instinctually. We all have that survival instinct, right? It's just geared in our brain. And the thing is that the way that our overpopulation and our overconsumption of resources is impacting the environment, it can impede with our abilities of our species to have that, to survive into the future, like to have a robust, healthy, projected happy course towards survival. So I think that raising awareness of how our overpopulation and our overconsumption of resources is destroying and can affect our chances. I really do believe that just raising awareness of it would change the trend. People would make different decisions when planning out their families.
But which people do you want to change the trend for? Because I would argue that, British people, for example, I think need to have more children, at least to keep the replacement level, two for each woman, 2 children to stay at the same population level and not to need to rely on bringing people from other countries. I think really we need to look at countries where the birth rate is high if you were worried about overpopulation, I think you're right to be. We have to look at those countries like, I don't know where, I'm imagining India, right, or Pakistan, and to say, hey, and those guys, they're not going to, I don't think they're going to be listening to us saying, hey guys, there's an overpopulation problem.
I think that it's a mistake to say that it's just an issue of like Pakistan or India, because maybe they may have a higher birth rate, and actually not maybe, they do have a higher birth rate than people in England or in other European countries. But the impact of every child in England may have the impact of multiple children in India. But, and that is a problem too, because, there is a lot of poverty, and, they want, and they need to get out of that poverty. They need to move into middle class, which it's happening a lot, and that's good. But the thing is that every child has an unsustainable impact. The impact of a child in the UK will have many times the impact of a child elsewhere. So I don't think it's an issue of one country or another. I think it really is a global issue.
But let's say that we do start to educate, and we're talking about the West really, that would listen to our call to say, guys, fewer children, right?
I think everyone has the capacity to listen to our calls, and if everyone is interested in their own survival and having water and having a planet that is sustainable. Another thing that in the film we go into is how even now breast milk is polluted by pollutants at a level that's even higher than allowed in drinkable water for one particular pollutant that's called PFAS, and how dangerous that is for babies. And so, I think everywhere, everybody cares about their babies. Everybody cares about having a livable planet. I don't think that only the West, is interested in that. I think everybody is, you know what I mean?
Well, right now we've got countries like Somalia, for example, or the Congo, the Central African Republic. They lead the world in terms of birth rate. So they are having 6 children per woman. In the UK, it's 1.4. In Japan, it's less than 1, which is unbelievably low. And other countries, quite a few other sort of Western democracies are really, really low. So if we started saying to people, the types of people who I think would listen would be maybe more educated, let's lower those numbers even more. So Britain would fall below 1, Japan would fall to 0.5. I don't think you'd be able to do so much right now with Somalia and whatever. So you'd end up with a population in 30 years that there wouldn't really be any ethnic English people anymore, or Europeans, and most of the world would be the descendants of the Somalians and the people from the Congo. I think some
I
people
don't see why they wouldn't listen. I think they are.
They've not been listening so far, have they?
Well, listening to who? Well, listening to who? I mean, nobody's talking about this. Greenpeace has on their UK website saying that they don't campaign about population. Listening to who? The United Nations celebrates that when we hit 8 billion. Listening to nobody. Nobody is talking about our overpopulation. So how would Nigeria and Africa, how would they know? And how will the people in the UK and everywhere know? So I think that everyone has the capacity to take this information and make different choices about their families. But the problem is, again, environmental organizations are afraid of talking that, and they just do not want to talk about that with clarity, and they just don't approach it.
I think that, I think you're right. I like your idea that we need to reduce the population worldwide. I would start in the countries with the highest, maybe you agree, with the highest birth rates, and start to educate those countries and start to say to people in Somalia and the Congo, hey, this is getting ridiculous, because otherwise they just have way too many people, and then those people start to come into Europe and so on.
I would start everywhere. I would start yes, because every country has their unique problems. Like I said, yes, countries, for example, in Africa, they have a lot of poverty, a lot of erosion of women's rights. They have child marriages. They're having these women, they get impregnated very early in their life. They don't get a chance to go to school. This cycle continues, and then in 13 years they're a mother, and in 30 years they already are starting. But it's a problem. It's a problem, but it's a problem everywhere, Andrew, not just there, because again, the UK is incredibly overpopulated. So is every European nation. So is Canada. So is Australia and the United States. and they are all using resources and producing waste in a way that's completely unsustainable. And their children are using more resources than the poorer countries. Now, this is the angle. So when like if you were to talk to Greenpeace and tell them what you just did, they would tell you, see, that is why we don't talk about population, because you are being racist. You are just focusing on this country. I'm not saying like not that.
No, I
at all.
know.
I'm saying that that's like the narrative, and that is why they so hard and so vigorously deny and say that there's no overpopulation, because they say no, otherwise you're just pointing at like this country or another. But see, I think that is a mistake. Because they don't look at themselves. It's like, okay, you're Greenpeace UK. Why don't you look at the fact that, in the film, we show how the UK went from 6 million. I forget exactly what point we started counting, but it was recently. It was, I think, at the start of the Industrial Revolution. From 6 million to almost 70 million people. And I know that it sounds like, oh, okay, but that is totally abnormal for human history, for a country like England, like any other, to increase by thousands of percentages. And so
I know, yeah, but it's hard, isn't it? Because I don't think human beings like to be told, hey, stop having kids. Especially when they already have a below replacement. I think the best you can hope for if you do want to reduce population is a slightly lower than replacement level population, like 1.8, 1.7, maybe 1.4 like the UK has. But to push people to have even fewer, I think denies their humanity and also stops them from being able to, as I said, support the older population. I mean, that if you want to reduce population, it has to happen slow enough so that the economy doesn't crash. And at the moment, there's, as you said, it's this Ponzi scheme where they keep having to bring in other people and bring in more and more people from the countries where we do have 5 or 6 points for replacement level. So I know that Greenpeace would call me racist and whatever, but I would say, like, hey, that's where the problem is.
I disagree with that, Andrew. I disagree that that's where the problem is, because you're so worried about like the economy without realizing, okay, your supermarket in Tesco, Andrew, is being supplied in a way that's not sustainable. And by sustainable, I mean that not like in sustainable. I mean literally, like it cannot be sustained. Like I'm telling you, let me give you just one example. You have avocados in Tesco. Wherever you go in London, you're having avocados, and they're wonderful, and they're from Mexico. I will tell you that in Mexico, the areas that produce avocados are using their water up so unsustainably that they're having to drill these underwater resources of water, this kind of like fossil water, like aquifers, to water these things in such a dramatic way that they're even having more earthquakes. So the way that we are, so I wouldn't say that about like how, we have to do it so slowly. I would say, well, no, because, the way that we're consuming resources is not going to be able to be sustained. And if you're worried about the economy, then again, the economy needs stability. It needs everything in the economy in the end comes back to the environment. Whatever product you are selling, whatever way you are building, it all comes down to natural resources. And if you don't have that, then it's going to collapse. So I would say that that's a much bigger problem. And in general, just having resources to support your own life is a much bigger problem. You know what I mean?
I totally get what you mean. And I think I've said from the start that I see that what you're saying is a huge problem. But I think we've got, not to repeat myself, but we've got 2 huge problems here. And I think,
but I would say one is a lot more existential than the other one.
Well, not really. Okay, there's another argument about culture, and this is something I've been learning from people who are ethnically English, who are not very happy with me because I push back against some of their ideas. But they make this point that at the moment, the English ethnicity, if you think of it as an ethnicity, like I don't know if a Mexican is an ethnicity or a Jew is an ethnicity, I don't know, but there's an English ethnicity, and it's down to something like 60% of the country. If we keep encouraging them to have fewer children, which is happening across the West in sort of modern societies, then they will no longer exist. So they would say this is a pretty big existential crisis for their race. And you could say the same for the Japanese. They won't exist anymore. So instead of that, I'm saying,
but who's stopping to exist? I mean, again, who's on the verge of non-existing? Like, who's on the only species that are on the verge of non-existence are the ones that we're wiping out. Like, again, humans are increasing by more than 1 million people every week.
humans
You
are.
know,
So I'm
humans are.
agreeing with you. I agree about the overpopulation issue. I completely agree with you. I'm saying to you, there are some ethnicities that are having 5 or 6 children per person, right? That's where the problem is, because as long as they keep doing that, the population is going to increase around the world.
I would say it's a problem. I would say having more than, I would say ideally I would say having 0 to 1 children is the only thing that's at this point in time, given how we are consuming resources and so unsustainably. I would say that that's the only thing that's not a problem. Like 0 to 1.
But
So
that only
if you
works.
want to have a
That only
child, like adult, but you know what? I think that the issues with the environment are on a magnitude of level so much more, because they are existential in the way of like not having enough resources to support your life. They are much more important than any kind of perceived issue of like, okay, this ethnicity is this or that, or this is bigger or greater or whatever. And again, I hate this thing about like, it's just, and that is why, again, that is why the people like with Greenpeace, they, or what my understanding is why they avoid that topic so bad. And even though we're wiping out all the species, you will see on their website, actually in the film we show their website, or at least what they had like before we posted the film. I don't know if they've changed it since, but they have these things saying why we don't campaign on population, and they always want to say, oh my gosh, that is such a racist thing. It just puts it, but it's not. It's a global issue. But I want to correct you. It's not about the people in Africa or India, because if you have a child, Andrew, like your kid is going to use up more resources than, you know, several people there. So it really is a global, but I'm not saying, so it's a UK issue. Forget about India, forget about Africa. It's a UK issue because you, Andrew, if you have a kid, your child is going to be born into this, you know, lifestyle that is going to consume so many more resources. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's a global issue. It's not a UK issue or an India issue or an Africa issue. It really is a global issue, because as a species, as an organism, we're just consuming in a way that's unsustainable, that will not be sustained.
I know, but I mean, look, the thing is, these are all. I think this is when the public often has issues with some of the environmentalism and things like that, because they're often being asked to do things fully aware that the people who are causing a lot of damage are not going to do it. So if you say to the English people who are already concerned about the fact that they're becoming a minority in their own country, let alone in the world, you say to them, you need to have even fewer children, fewer children. They know that they're just going to be completely wiped out, and they're going to be living under Sharia law within about 30 years. And so will you. And then we'll be going, okay, Greenpeace and so on. Well, what good is Greenpeace?
But Andrew, but like, again, I completely disagree with that. What in your mind makes you think that putting this, by the way, I'm not an I'm just an individual. Like, this film is just made by me because I'm worried about that. So when you say like, oh, environmental I'm just an individual who made this film. Okay?
No, I understand that.
But it's not coming from some major, like, large organization or anything like that. It's coming from
No, I'm not suggesting it is.
Yeah, but let me okay, hold on, what was I gonna say? Sorry,
you were gonna. I think like the thing, what I meant by that was just when people are told that they should do things to help the environment. So let's say net zero, which is a totally different topic. Okay, that's not what we're talking about. But they're told, hey, you need to recycle more because blah blah blah. And it's like, well, look, if China's not going to do it, then there is no point in anyone else doing it, because they're doing 99% of all the problems.
Okay,
so that's what, if people are being told in England, you've got to get your birth rate below 1. Meanwhile, all of these people in the Middle East and Africa are having 5 or 6 kids. What is the world demographics going to look like in 20, 30 years? They don't want to live under Sharia law.
Okay, Andrew. Okay, Andrew, got it. But listen, first of all, this film that I made is not geared towards one group of people, towards the United Kingdom, okay? I made it, and it's actually on YouTube live for anyone in the world to see it, from Africa to Pakistan to anywhere, okay? I premiered it. It was aired in 40 public channels in Latin America, in 10 countries. It was aired in Brazil, Colombia, Argentina, many public channels in Latin America, but that's just because of my connection with Latin America. Right?
Sure.
But it's not geared towards Latin America either. It's geared towards the world, okay? And so no, I do reject that thing about you're telling these people to do this. Like, I'm not telling any group of people. I'm telling the world. Like, I'm telling the world that it's just not gonna be sustainable. And because this is a film about survival. Like, it starts with the thing about like our instinct to survive, and it ends with that. Because it's like, if we wanna survive, then it's not, I don't think, helpful to be like, okay, well, it's them who are doing the problem. And that is why population is such an unpopular topic. That's why nobody wants to talk about it, because people then they start saying, well, no, it's them. Like UK, like, well, we already, well, no, like, you know, the royal family, they have 3 kids. They don't have like, you know, like ideal would be 0 to 1, you know, or like they have 3 kids, but it's you know, and each one of them has an incredible large dream. It's not their fault that their world is, but it's a global problem. It's not their fault. It's a global problem. Does that make sense?
Yes, I mean, I agree it's a global problem, but I just think
it's not geared towards anyone. The message is not for one particular group.
If there are some countries with already a far below replacement level birth rate, then and there are other countries with 3 times or 4 times that birth rate.
Just as big as a problem. Just as big. Japan is Japan is shrinking, and they're just as big as a problem, Andrew, because their population of 120 million or whatever is completely unsustainable. They're relying on resources from Latin America, from South Asia, from Africa, depleting the forest in all these people to support their 120 million people in Japan. So even though they are shrinking, they are every bit as much of a problem. You know what I mean? So it really is a global problem.
I know, but I think this whole time, I think we're talking past each other a bit, because I'm agreeing with you that it is a problem, right? I'm like, I get it. Like, I'm saying that is a problem. However, we have this other problem, and I don't think you're willing to engage with that problem as well. Which is, if we want to fix your problem, which we do, unfortunately, the only way to do it is by creating an even bigger problem, or equally big problem, which is the declining population. And the Japanese won't be able to afford to look after their non-working population, and also that they will cease to be culturally relevant as they start to shrink.
I think not depending on, I think not having such a dependence on primary resources from the rest of the world would give them more stability, would give them more economic stability. And again, what we've seen is that when women have fewer children, that results in them having more time to pursue careers, that injects more like professional lives into the economy, and that results in what's called a demographic dividend. So I disagree that is a problem. Again, it is. And to whatever extent it may be a problem, like, I think that if you just put them side by side, because the other one is so much more existential, I think that it just is not something that counters that. You know what I mean? Like, humans.
Well, it depends how you define existential, because again, like the English or the Latinos, for example, you know, you tell them you guys are gonna have a much lower birth rate, you're going to start to shrink. Meanwhile, all of these other countries in like Africa are not going to do that.
But why are you saying that they're not going to do that? Like, why are you saying, like, so if you're saying that, like, why are you saying that if we tell everyone, if environmental organizations start being honest about the fact that our population, like, why do you think that all of these countries wouldn't care? Like, why
I think
do you
if
think
they're honest, if they're honest and not afraid of being called racist, then they will see that certain countries, particularly in one part of the world, have a birth rate that is so much higher than anywhere else in the world that it's actually grotesque, and that needs to be resolved. And I think we need to be a bit braver and to say, look, we're not bad people, but those countries, because otherwise everyone's just going to go, no, this is hypocrisy. We're already shrinking ourselves out of existence. And meanwhile, these other people have
how shrinking out of existence? Like you went from 6 million to almost 70 million in 200 years.
But I feel like you're deliberately not understanding this because those are not British. Those are not. You don't, because those are not British birth rates. That's not from British birth rates. You know that. That's immigration from the countries I'm talking about.
No. It's not about
the Industrial Revolution. Fine, yeah, but
it's about but it's not fine. Like it's why the countries grew. So it's not about point of view. It is the ability to have fossil fuels, the ability to have technology that resulted in us having tractors and energy and a lot more food that allowed this expansion in the human population. And that happened everywhere, Andrew, even people who were not having any immigration. So all of the countries, including yours, including mine, in Mexico, everybody grew to unsustainable levels, regardless of immigration. You know what I mean?
But also, it's a bad thing, I agree with you, but it's also good because, hey, we're alive, you know, that could be you and me that weren't born.
That's great, except right now, because of all that, we're using resources in a way that won't be sustainable. So that means you're not going to be able to, like these fruits that you're getting in your Tesco from Mexico, that's not going to continue forever because Mexico's depleting their water that they're using to grow to export that to the UK. So it's not sustainable. So that's...
Well, then Mexico should stop doing it.
Mexico should stop doing it? Should stop what? Should stop...
using all this water.
Okay, well, our population is huge, and it's used for food. So, yeah, I mean, if it's being used for food.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. Like, it's too many people. It's ridiculous.
Everywhere, even in Mexico, like.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what the answer is. You say a lower birth rate, but like, man, I don't think I'm happy with the idea of like telling families in Mexico, in the UK, wherever, like you need to have fewer than one child per person. I think British people, I think they need to have more children, so that the government stops trying to get more people from other places to come in.
Well, you don't need to have people from other. You don't need to start bringing. It's just, this situation of just trying to grow the economy every year, either through birth rates or through immigration. It's just like a total lack of consideration for living in a world with planetary boundaries and with finite resources. So it's just this idea that we're living in a place where we're ethereal beings and our trash doesn't go anywhere. And the water you're using, what do you mean? Like if Mexico don't use that water, again, they don't grow food and they don't grow food for you. You know what I mean? Because you're not able to support your population, Andrew.
I sort of want Mexico to say, fuck off, England. I'm not giving you any more of this. We're going to make our own economy. And for Britain to have to go, shit, okay, we got to actually start like farming and making our own stuff now.
But you know that at the scale that you have, like with your population, you're not able to support it. Yeah.
Well, that sounds quite worrying.
You're not able to support it, like neither is, like I said, not Japan, like, and nobody's able to support it sustainably. Like the amount of resources that we're using is just not sustainable. And that is kind of like, I mean, that's part 3 of the film. Have you watched part 3 of the film, Andrew?
Yes, it said that it wasn't sustainable. It was very interesting. What does the film reveal about the real limits of plastic recycling? That's really interesting.
I mean, that's another, unfortunate, like, misunderstanding that people feel very good about that. People feel good about all of their berries in their little clams, just putting it in the curve with the 3 chasing arrows. But the fact of the matter is that there's some very serious limits to that. Most plastic can only be recycled a few times, and a few very, very limited times, like usually under 10 or under 5. And then they degrade. And so they become trash. And then, like you'll see all of these things have these arrows, and they'll say like, okay, well, we'll downcycle it. Oh, now we're able to do a park bench with this plastic that's downcycled, because we can't recycle, but we can downcycle. But how many park benches do you need? Like right now, we're producing more than 400 million tons of plastic, which is why, again, it's another indicator of how like we are just overpopulated everywhere. Because plastic is a huge problem. It's drowning the whales in the ocean. It's causing severe pain and suffering to the other species we share this planet with. It's polluting us. You saw the part about like breast milk and how a lot of the chemicals that we are accumulating over our lives is now being accumulated and being transferred to babies, which is very unfortunate. But the question is, okay, if plastic is so bad, then we need to transfer to something that's not plastic. And the problem is we are so many, like our scale is so big that even if we try to switch all of our containers to bamboo, you know, or paper, like that is such a large scale because it's 400 million tons of plastic that are produced every year. That is such a large scale that if we did that, we would be using, you know, a big percentage of the arable land just to produce plastics instead of to grow food. So that's just one more indicator of how it's just not sustainable, like the scale of humans that we have.
Why do people still promote recycling as the solution?
Well, because I guess the answer to that is probably because it's just very convenient and it makes probably some environmental organizations feel like they're doing something. You know, everybody wants to feel like, okay, yes, we're solving the problems of the world. It's the same with palm oil, which is the first example that we show in the film. Everybody's like, oh yeah, we got this ban on palm oil. It's like, okay, well, these other oils, vegetable oils that are used instead of that, a lot of them have an even bigger footprint, are harder to produce, use up more land, and use similar geographic areas. So, okay, it feels great to say, oh, look at us, we're so effective, we're so great, we banned this, we did this. But the fact of the matter, unfortunately, that's a lot of these solutions are not making a dent, and sometimes they're making things worse. But they again, they don't want to talk about the other issue, our global unsustainability, our global overpopulation. They just don't want to touch it. You know what I mean?
Where can people go and see your film? There'll be a link below the video, I suppose.
There will be a link, but yeah, they can just look up Greenwashed or greenwashed.film, and there it is.
And you know what I want to ask you? Yeah, who's a heretic you admire?
A heretic I admire is Chris Packham. Chris Packham, I admire him a lot. He is very, very fortunately, he participates in our film, but it's not because of that, and that has nothing to do with what I admire him, but because he has been someone who really takes his role as a science communicator very, very seriously. He angers and sometimes stands against people on both sides of the aisle. Like, he speaks very strongly about, you know, issues that sometimes upset this side or that side. For example, he talks about the issues of population, even though, well, that's something that unites actually all sides. Don't like to talk about it. Not the right, not the left. Nobody likes to talk about it. But he's just very, very clear and very courageous. You know, he's had death threats. He had something with an arson attack. I don't know if you read about that. Like, no. He was campaigning about, I believe, about some kind of ban on animal hunting or something, and they set a car on fire on his door, and they've left like dead animals at his door, like, and yet, you know, that I feel like that would intimidate a lot of people, like including myself, like having death threats, having things like that happen. But he is just remarkable in the sense that he's just very, very courageous, very clear, and yeah, I guess he's a heretic that I admire a lot. I have a second one, if I can just give you one. Ingrid Newkirk, the PETA. You know the PETA founder?
No, no.
Okay, well, Ingrid Newkirk, the founder of PETA, she's also somebody who's very vocal, very outspoken. Anyway, they're both just amazing people. Like, they restore my faith in humanity, both of them.
Oh, those are some beautiful, beautiful heretics. Sophia, thank you so much. And I'll see you next time. See you soon.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew.